The 7 Years' War was the first global war in history, a struggle for global primacy between Britain and France and their respective allies, mainly in North America and Europe, but also in India, Africa, the Caribbean, and at sea. First, in North America, Anglo-French conflict over their colonies started in 1754 in what is also known as the French and Indian War, a 9-year war that ended France's presence as a land power in America. By the 1750s, the French had largely claimed Canada and the Great Lakes, while Britain clung to its 13 colonies on the eastern seaboard. The frontier area around the upper Ohio River Valley soon became a hotbed of contention between British, French, and Native American forces. The war was officially sparked when the French rejected the British warning delivered by a young George Washington to stay away from the area around today's Pittsburgh. Early in the war, the French and their Native American allies had the upper hand over the British. However, the tide turned when the British captured Louisbourg in 1758, followed by Quebec City and then Montreal. The dominance of the British Navy was a deciding factor in the outcome of the French and Indian War, as it successfully blockaded French ships from reaching the colonies. Besides, Britain seized French territories in Guadeloupe, Martinique, West Africa, and also India as it invaded Pondicherry in 1761. In Europe, on the other hand, the war was driven by antagonism between Prussia, which was seeking greater dominance, and Austria, the empire with historical influence over the German states and Central Europe. The European conflict started from the Austrian Habsburgs' attempt to win back the rich province of Silesia, which had been wrested from them by Prussia during the War of Austrian Succession. In parallel, France prepared to attack Hanover, whose Prince Elector was also the King of Britain. Britain concluded a treaty whereby Prussia agreed to protect Hanover. In response, France forged an alliance with its longtime enemy, Austria, an event known as the Diplomatic Revolution, along with Russia, which feared Prussian expansion to the east, and then eventually Spain. Frederick the Great of Prussia, a fine strategist, made the first move kicking off the war in Europe when he invaded Saxony in 1756 before the unsuccessful siege of Prague. Also, despite its initial successful offensives against Hanover, France was no longer able to impose itself on the state. On the Eastern Front, Prussia was holding off against the Russians and Austrians, but at great cost, until the war took a new turn in 1762 with the death of Russian leader Tsarina Elizabeth. Her successor did not want to engage in war against Prussia and quickly signed a peace treaty. In the West, the Spanish Empire decided to ally with France to counter British dominance. However, the Spanish invasion of Portugal, Britain's ally, proved to be a heavy defeat for Spain and France. What's more, Spain also lost its colonies in Cuba and Manila in the Philippines to Britain. The 7 Years' War resulted in more than 1 million deaths around the world and led to 2 treaties. The Treaty of Hubertusburg forced Austria to abandon Silesia to Prussia, which earned the reputation of a new major European power. Weakened Austria, on the other hand, saved face by liberating Saxony. The 1763 Treaty of Paris officially brought an end to the French and Indian War in America, with British victory. France lost almost all of its colonies except Pondicherry and some colonies in the West Indies and Senegal. Its supremacy in Europe was halted until after the French Revolution and the rise of Napoleon. The treaty gave Cuba and Manila back to Spain and exchanged Louisiana for Florida to the British. Britain was awarded Canada and Florida, thereby removing European rivals from North America and earning the reputation as the world's major power and mightiest navy. To repay war debts, the British intended to heavily tax their colonies, causing great discontent among Americans and sowing the seeds of the American War of Independence. The French loss would later inspire them to side with American patriots against the British during the Revolutionary War.